Welcome to the Left of Str8 Show, where we talk entertainment, music, books, foodies, and more each week with special guest interviews of interest to the LGBTQ community and our straight allies. Direct from the entertainment capital of Northeast Ohio. Your host, Scott Fullerton, chats with some of your favorite entertainers, celebrities, newsmakers, and behind-the-scenes people across the country and around the world who make it all happen. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and let's start talking.
Guys, welcome to another episode of the Left of Str8 Show, where we try to bring to the forefront the voices and stories of our LGBTQ community and our straight allies. We pull everybody from entertainment to foodies, books to music to advocacy. I'm your host, as always, Scott Fullerton, and today I have a very special guest with me. He's been stirring up the culinary world with his eclectic and innovative dishes, and he has a seriously vibrant personality to match. Hailing from my neck of the woods here in Ohio, he's having cooked his way through New York, New Jersey, and Florida. Our guest today is a tour de force in the restaurant industry with over 25 years experience under his belt. Not only is he an accomplished self-taught chef, but he also serves up a dose of flair and fun as the occasional drag queen, which I happen to love. From starting his culinary journey in Greenwich Village and the Village Trattoria, to curating unique menus at Third and Vine, and managing and consulting local establishments now in Florida, Chef Lynn Wheeler has been a fascinating and rich culinary background, and his diverse experience and culinary creations are a testament to his passion for the art of food. And did I mention his mobile food truck business, Duck Truck Gourmet? I love that. Brings his culinary creations to you in farmers markets, events, and homes all over Central Florida. So let's learn a little bit more about him, and please welcome to the Left of Str8 Show, the talented and handsome Mr. Chef Lynn Wheeler. Lynn, how we doing?
Hi, Scott. Great, thanks. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks so much for calling in here from beautiful downtown Florida. You have the shirt to prove it there. I'm loving it. Welcome aboard. What's going on in beautiful downtown Florida today?
Just another hot sunny day down here. It's about 95 I think today, so we're getting up there. But just having a nice kind of relaxing day. Been looking forward to chatting with you.
Well, me as well, my friend. I'm excited. I always have two questions I ask all of our first-time guests. The first is where you grew up and what kind of a kid were you? You were here from Ohio, like I said. Whereabouts in Ohio, and what kind of kid were you?
So I grew up in a small town called Lisbon, which is kind of close to where you're at in the Youngstown area. Really, like I said, little town. I graduated with 105 people. So as far as what I was like as a kid, I mean, I was kind of a nerd. I studied really hard. I did really well, graduated tied with my twin brother for second in the class in high school. I was a dancer for 9 years from the time I was 12 until 21. I studied modern jazz and hip hop dance in a local dance studio in Lisbon. So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. That was my kind of athletic, foray. And I mean, I was kind of active. I did theater as well as in high school and drama competitions in high school. So yeah, that's my growing up, really.
That's awesome.
Close.
Not too far from me at all, really. I mean, I've gone down. What was it? Once upon a time, was it like the China capital of the world or something like that? You get all your really cool plateware and stuff from around that area and across the river.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. And the second question I like to ask everybody, you're an open, out, and proud chef. Tell me about, when did you kind of first come out to yourself? Who was the first person you told? And when do you feel you kind of first found your LGBTQ tribe?
So I'm one of those, one of those people who kind of like, I always knew, even at the youngest age of like 5, 6 years old, I knew something was different about me. And I think having an identical twin brother kind of pushed me a little bit more towards knowing that, because we were supposed to be exactly alike and we were just completely different. And, when you're that young, and that was, a million years ago now, you don't know what it is. But I think, I finally came out to myself when I was probably around 14. And struggled with it a lot. I mean, it was, I grew up in, rural Ohio, like I said, and my mother was very religious. She still is, her and her husband. So it was a struggle for me because, I got ingrained in me that it was wrong and that I was going to hell and all of that stuff. So um, it took a toll for a little while. I contemplated suicide, but finally, just kind of, worked on myself enough to be able to um, be okay with myself. And I came out then to my best friend at the time. She was someone who I'm still really close with now. We hung out all the time back in high school, and I want to say I was maybe 17 at that time, like junior year in high school, when I came out to her first, and then gradually started coming out to my siblings. I have, like I said, my twin brother, and I have two younger sisters, um, and then a little more publicly. I tried to keep it from my mom as long as I could because I knew it was going to cause a lot of problems. But she eventually found out because I had come out to some of my friends, and their parents had heard, and it was a close knit community, a small community, so she knew all the parents, and that didn't go over so well. But I'm here
Yeah.
now, and things are great. So
There you go,
as
stronger for it.
yeah.
When did you think you first kind of started finding your tribe?
I definitely started picking up my tribe when I went to college. I went to Kent State for fashion design, and I met so many people there that I'm still friends with now to this day. That we are very close. My best friend actually, who lives in San Francisco now, him and his husband. We've been 20, 30, almost 30 years now. We've known each other. So yeah, and then in New York, I found a few people there as well. Obviously, I moved to New York when I was about 21, and lived there for 20 years, and worked in the restaurant business, as you noted, through all of that, and met people obviously in and out of the restaurants. And you know, restaurant work is interesting because you're really close friends with the people you work with when you're working with them, but when you move on, you typically don't stay friends with those people. But there are a few that I I've been in contact with since we worked together, and are still some of my closest friends, and considered family actually. So yeah.
I hear you. A restaurant was my previous life. I was a restaurant for 23 years, all the way from server to manager to all that other fun stuff. So I know what you're saying there. It's usually very close knit at the time because you're working weird hours and your weekends are always stuck at the restaurant. So
Yep.
you go out with your friends after. So I definitely understand how that goes. I love that you mentioned it. I was going to mention it as well. I mean, you are a true Renaissance man. You're a self taught chef, but you talk about your dancing and you did fashion in college. Talk about how are those roads less traveled, the dance and the fashion?
It was uh, the dance was, I really loved it, and it was a great part of my life. It just, I studied it, like I said, at a small studio in Lisbon, which still running now, and I still am in contact with the studio owner. She's a great friend of mine as well, and she's not teaching anymore, but she has other people teaching there for her. But anyway, when I went to Kent, I stayed. Obviously, it's too far away to commute to the main campus of Kent. So I stayed on campus, and I tried to go back and forth and continue taking classes, but it was too much for me because I was working as well as attending classes. Um, and I just fell off of it, and then, never went back. I do have a little bit of regret from that because I really did enjoy it, and, it kept me in a lot better shape than I am now. But, c'est la vie, right? We're a lot different in our 20s than in
Exactly.
our 40s, mid
Right.
40s. Um, and then as far as fashion goes, my mom is a tailor, and she taught us all how to sew when we were kids. And I really enjoyed that as well. I still do a little bit of that. I mean, I started to really do some more of that recently, get back into sewing and making clothes and stuff like that. So um, I had decided I was trying to figure out when I went to college if I was going to study fashion or if I was going to go into acting or into culinary school, and eventually made the decision to study fashion. And Kent State has a really great fashion program. They're really, really highly ranked. So I went there. I enjoyed it. It was a little more demanding than I thought it was going to be. I ended up only actually doing 2 years and then quitting school. And like I said, moving to New York around 21. Um, but it's something that I still, like I said, I still have a passion for. I still really love dressing people and making stuff. So it's something that I'll always have with me, but I fell into restaurant work in college, as a lot of people do, to kind of make some money while I was going to school. And like you said, I started off as a waiter and then was a manager and then chef. So I've gone all through the industry.
Right. And I'm sure just the eye you have to have in fashion's got to help you in your food creations, right? Because your plate presentation is amazing. Just going through the photographs on your website and things, that had to help a lot in the actual presentation and knowing what to look for in lines and things like that, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all art when it comes down to it, right? Fashion design, cooking, plating, dance, it's all art. So, yeah, it definitely helps to have that background and that eye to be able to put things together and as far as the lines, like you said, and even the colors and the way things reflect on each other. So, yeah, it did help a lot, I think.
I bet. And talk about now being a self taught chef. I mean, like I said, I did the same thing. I started a restaurant very early, and I stopped school too because you kind of learn as you go in restaurant, right? You kind of learn the
Yeah.
business from the inside out. Chef is a little different though because there's a lot of technique involved. Were you able to just do you pick things up quickly? Were you able through your mentors and people you work with kind of learn how did you get the techniques down that you needed to learn?
Yeah, I've always been one who picks things up relatively quickly and easily, so that helped a lot. Yeah, I mean, I've worked in so many different restaurants from Ohio through to New York, and then starting in the kitchens and then New Jersey. I learned from everybody, like exactly like you said. I learned from everybody that I worked with. I watched Food Network like it was my job most of the time, so you learn a lot from that as well. I always loved cooking, and I really kind of accidentally became a professional chef. I had a friend. I used to have big dinner parties all the time, and I had a friend uh, of a friend who was getting married, and our mutual friend, who was a close friend of mine at the time, Michael. He volunteered me to do her wedding, and I was like, wait, what? So he's like, yeah, you can do it. It's 80 people. She just wants like hors d'oeuvres and a cocktail party. So you're going to do her wedding. And I just agreed to do it. And that's when DivaLicious Catering started. That was my first catering company back in New York. And yeah, I mean, that was my accidental foray into becoming a professional chef after having cooked, just at home, dinner parties for 30, 40 people, which is no small feat, but
Right.
doing somebody's wedding is a little bit more like this is a really important thing. So but yeah, that's what happened. So
And I love the name Divalicious Catering. How did that come to you? That's fantastic.
that came to me because at one point I have another close friend of mine who was somebody who I met as a waiter in a restaurant. The two of us worked at the original pastis together back in the day.
Oh, okay.
So that's a New York staple. But he at one day we were just chatting, and he called me a DivaLicious bitch, and I was like, oh, DivaLicious, I like that. So I took it and ran with it. So yeah, that's how DivaLicious came about, and that was great. I did quite a few things in New York for clients, a lot of small dinner parties, anywhere from like 8 people to actually did dinners for 2 people, but up to like 30, 40 people. Again, cocktail parties. I had a pretty regular client there for a while who I did all of her like birthdays and stuff. So yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. What was maybe your biggest challenge you had to learn along the way? What do you think was something that kind of threw you for a loop, but you're able to get through it?
Um, it's very demanding. I mean, it's fun, but the hours are long. When you're especially even in restaurants or whether you're running your own business, like with the catering company, it was long hours. It was a lot of work, and in New York, small spaces to work in and small spaces to work out of. So, it becomes kind of like that's where dance comes into it a lot. It's really like a ballet kind of moving around these small spaces trying to make things work. But
Right.
it's definitely a time suck. I mean, relationships suffer. A lot of things suffer when you're in the restaurant industry in management. So, as a manager on the floor or as a manager in the kitchen as the chef, you are there all the time. And I think, you know, a lot of restaurant owners tend to take advantage of you. It sucks, but you're on that salary, so you are there all the time, and that was one thing that really I struggled with a bit because I'm also someone who I take a lot of responsibility in what I do. So I feel that I'm responsible to be there all the time when I'm working in a job like that. So if anything happened, I would drop everything, whatever I was doing, and run to the restaurant. So that was, I think, probably the biggest challenge is the time constraints.
I bet. I mean, I remember I absolutely hated when in my manager days, I would get stuck in the 12 to 10 shifts. So it's
Mm,
like you're there from 12 to 10, you're through the busiest parts of lunch and dinner. Then, as you said, you have all the time suck work after. You have to write schedules for 25 waiters and 15 busboys and 13 hosts, and you're doing this. And by the time you get off work, everything's closed. So you can't really do anything after 10 o'clock, and you're too tired to wake up in the morning. So, yeah, I don't think people realize it's a lot of time suck. You're right.
yeah, yeah. No, there's a story when I was managing a restaurant, a well-known restaurant in New York City. I can't really talk too much about the specific details, but I got a phone call on a day where I was supposed to be off, and it was one of my waiters calling me from jail, and he and the sommelier and bartender and like another waiter had all been arrested the night before, and so they were like, "We're not going to be able to make it to work today." And I'm like, "What did you guys do?" you know so I had to take my day that day where I was supposed to be off and go in and find somebody to cover all of their shifts and end up
No.
working for the sommelier because they couldn't be there. So yeah, it's a time suck, and it's stressful, and like I said, I'm just like the responsibility falls to you when you're in that management position, whether it's again the chef running the kitchen or the manager running the front of the house or the floor. So it's tough, but also fun, I mean,
The challenge can be definitely fun. I mean, and you're working with some good people usually. We talk about challenges in it. I worked for a restaurant called Bobby McGee's. Had you ever heard of it? Because I know we're back here a little bit,
yeah, I
but
don't think,
all of the waiters and waitresses and hosts and cocktail people all dressed up as real or fictional characters and had to act them out while they served you and everything. So it was a lot of fun that way. But and we had, like I said, I think it was the highest was 23 locations. They're defunct now, but I remember being in Burbank managing that restaurant, and everybody was an actor, and everybody had auditions every other day. So I
yeah,
had to have 70 people on staff just to fill the number of shifts because everyone
yeah.
needed. I have a hand model audition here, and I have to go out for this audition. It was crazy time. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have those weird things that pop up. Jail is not something that I wasn't even familiar with
No.
too, because
Yeah.
I've seen that happen. Too crazy. I love it. Well, let's talk about your New York journey. Besides your catering, like I said, two very well-known restaurants, Third and Vine and also the Village Trattoria. How were those experiences, and what all did you learn from there?
So the Village Trattoria was my first restaurant chef
Mm,
position, and that was another one that just happened by accident. The I have a close friend who was the chef there, and he fell ill and needed someone to replace him. And at the time, I was working at another restaurant as the reservations manager, and doing all of that, like reservations and events and stuff like that. And
mm.
he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I have to leave this job. Do you want to come and take over as the chef?" And I was like, I mean, I've never I've never run a restaurant kitchen before. And he said, "Oh, you can do it. It's only a 45 seat house. It'll be totally fine. You'll come, you'll spend 2 weeks with me in the kitchen. I'll get you up to speed on everything, and then you'll take over." And so I I I went with it. I went there and I met the owners, and we hit it off well. And I started working in there. I did like a couple of months there with his menu, and then fall came, and I rewrote the whole menu, and we did really well. Uh, we started, when I first started there, they only had a beer and wine license, and then the owners ended up getting a full liquor license. We were trying to really get the revenue pumping at that point. So,
Mhm.
I changed the menu, they added the full bar, and it went really well for a while. But their overhead was just, I mean, it's Greenwich Village, like, the rents there are ridiculous. And this was 2009, I believe, is when this was, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, it was a struggle for them, and they ended up closing. So I moved on from there and did some more management stuff, before friends of mine who I had worked with previously. um, they were opening their place in Jersey City, Third and Vine, which was a small plates tapas menu from the kitchen, wine and cheese bar. We had a full, cheese case with up to 35, 40 cheeses every night. The owners were uh, a sommelier and fromager. So Jamie, who was the wife, the fromager, she worked at Casa Lula in New York for a long time, and then Brian was the husband. Worked with me at Waverly Inn, and then he was the sommelier and ran the bar program. And originally I was supposed to consult with them and just help them write the menu, and ended up they just asked me at one point if I wanted to be the person who ran the kitchen. And because they found a space bigger than what they thought they were going to. They
Mm.
found it was an old pizza shop, so it had a huge kitchen, which was awesome. And so yeah, so I went there and worked with. It was almost, though I didn't have any equity in it, it was almost as though I was a partner with them, not really, an employee of theirs. And we were great. We're great friends. We're still in contact now. And yeah, I mean, I designed that menu from start to finish, changed things seasonally, changed most of the menu changed pretty frequently. The only two things that never changed on the menu were the cheesecake that I did, a maple bacon cheesecake that was like bestseller from day one. And if I knew if I took that off the menu, I'd have a revolt. and and then blue cheese creme brulee, which that idea came to me. The Jamie, who, like I said, was the fromager, she was doing a brulee blue cheese from the cheese case as like a kind of dessert. And I thought, now that sounds really good. Let me see if I can create a creme brulee with that. So it turned out great. People loved it. And so those two things never changed on the menu.
Wine and cheese are two of my weaknesses. I couldn't imagine there. Ah, it sounds so good. And I love one of the things you said really stuck in me. My most frustrating thing with New York, um, when I lived in Connecticut for a while, and so it was not that far of a drive to go to New York, and I'd try to go at least once a month into town. But because, like you said, we're talking about rent prices and things happening and chefs wanting to be exploitive, I would go there 1 month and my restaurant would be gone the next month, or 6 months later,
Yep.
it would be gone. There's always such a huge turnover of restaurants. I lost one of my favorite brunch places of all times. It's like, oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sad. But very cool. I love that. And tapas, I think, are very interesting. How is that? I mean, it's got to be a challenge, I would think, food cost wise and everything, because you have so many small different plates. How is that to create a menu on tapas? I think that'd be difficult, just for my
It
small knowledge of kitchen side.
So, I mean, it could be, like, you learn a lot in the restaurants to cross utilize. And so there was, obviously very different dishes, but components that would be similar, or ingredients at least that could be used multiple ways. And having the cheese station, if I did a pesto, like that could be paired with cheese, or if I did any kind of duxelle or something like that, that part of that could also go to the cheese case and be paired with some of the cheeses to go on the cheese boards, which really helped out with that kind of stuff a lot. We did we called it tapas, but there were we didn't do any like full entrees really. We did a
Right.
mac and cheese that was a decent sized portion, but still, just kind of, medium sized shareable for the table, and salads and things like that. But we had like a grilled cheese sandwich menu too. So that was a lot of, again, we'd use cheeses, some of the same cheeses in the front and the back. So a lot of that helped with keeping costs down. And we had a small staff. I mean, it was a big kitchen, but everything was in that environment, was trying to get everybody, not turn and burn, but kind of, you want to get them in and out
Sure.
as quickly as possible. You want them to have a nice time. But when we had, I think, what did we have, 50 seats in there, so we needed to get it going to make the money that we needed to make over there, even in Jersey City. Again, rents still, because it's like the fifth borough, things are
Right.
pretty expensive. And so we didn't really do a lot of a la minute. It was like everything was ready, things would go in, and I had the pizza ovens from the previous restaurant. So those were 600 degrees, you could throw something in there and in 5 minutes it's ready, it's hot, it's ready to go. The longest things that took were like the mac and cheese, which were already I'd have those pre-portioned out and ready to go. And again, pop them in that pizza oven and they were out on the table within 15 minutes. So, you
That's
know,
great.
yeah. So, we were able to keep most nights 2 to 3 people in the kitchen. I'd have my dishwashers cross-trained on how to help plate some of the food if they needed to hop in and help plate some of the food. Um, but it was really myself and a sous chef and then a prep cook who would, he would come in, help in the morning with me and help prep, and then maybe start off service. And then my sous chef would come in a little bit, later in the afternoon and help finish through the prep. And the two of us would really run the kitchen most nights. And then, on my day off, the sous chef would obviously be the man in charge. So, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you do what you can. I mean, I made as much in-house as I could. We didn't buy a lot of stuff in. So I did ice creams and all the desserts and everything, made from scratch, sauces, everything. So
Food costs and labor. Those are the restaurant sucks there. We know that, right?
for sure,
Goodness
for sure.
gracious. We'll talk about a 25-year career now in food and catering and working restaurants in different capacities. What have you seen as maybe some of the biggest changes over the 25 years? And talk about maybe our LGBTQ representation. I mean, I remember reading an article a couple years back from Cat Cora that LGBT representation was actually better than female representation in chefs for a while. What have you seen over your 25 years as far as trends going and as far as LGBTQ representation?
Sure. I mean, I think Cat Cora definitely had it right there. I mean, it's still a big thing in the especially in the kitchens with chefs. You don't see as many female chefs. It's changing a bit, and you do see more now. But it's for uh, you know for something that's considered a lot of times more of a feminine work, or like you like a lot of people expect women in the kitchen, which obviously BS as far as I'm concerned. But it's, you don't see as many female chefs as you would think, and they're on the rise, which is great. Um, LGBT LGBT representation, it's, I feel like in restaurants it's always been pretty good. It's a lot of artists, especially in the front of the house. It's a lot of artists, like you said, actors, stuff like that, who work there, which a high percentage of those people are members of the community. So, you do have that. And it's never been an issue. I've never had any issues working in restaurants as far as my being gay or, and out. It's, even working in Ohio in small, smaller places in Ohio, never had any problems. But 25 years in the business, it's a lot. Like just like you, I started out, I mean, way back when as a dishwasher, and then I ended up moving out into the front of the house as a waiter. I was a waiter for, I don't know, 18, 20 years between Ohio and New York. And that was great. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I was really good at it. But after a while, dealing with so many demanding people gets to you. And so I had the opportunity to start managing, and I enjoyed that just as much. So I managed for probably another, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And then, like I said, just fell into working in kitchens. And that ended up being, if I could go back and start it all over, I would start off in the kitchen. I would have stayed there. I would have moved from the dish pit to the saute line or something, rather than going onto the front of the house, because it's just as rewarding, and you don't have to see those people face to face all the time. I mean, I love people, so it's not, I don't get me wrong, but when you've got 8 tables in your section and everybody's screaming at you because they need more water or more wine, or want some steak sauce for their steak, God forbid, you know it's it's rough. But yeah, like I said, as far as representation, again, for the LGBTQ community, I feel like restaurants have always kind of been a safe haven. That's always kind of been a place where we can go and we can work and not have to deal with too much BS.
Right. We're going to circle back around to experiences with customers in 5 questions later. So be sure to
Okay.
stay tuned for that next Tuesday. But talk about, now you're down in Florida. Every region has their own kind of style and flavors and vibrancy, right? What are you finding was the biggest difference or biggest adjustments you made going from New York to Florida? Or was there not any for you?
The biggest thing is, and I don't I don't want to attribute it to the age of people down here, but seasoning things, it's always, there's too much salt, it's too spicy. It's like, and I mean, I obviously, as a chef, I season my food. It's got to taste good, and but it's a lot of that. I also find, there's not a lot down here of like mom and pop places. And if there are, they're hard, they're hard for you to get into. They're really family oriented, which is great, obviously. But, you know, I never wanted to be someone who worked in chain restaurants. When I first moved down here, it took me a month and a half to find my first job down here, because I just was sending out resume after resume after resume, but it was either corporate jobs that were getting back to me, and something that I just never wanted to do, or I wasn't getting any responses. I finally found my first job by posting on Facebook, "Hey, does anybody know anybody in Florida that is looking for a chef?" And a friend of mine from New York did know somebody down here and put us in contact, and I ended up being his chef de cuisine for as my first job for about, I only worked there for about 3 months because it was a little farther away than I wanted to be commuting every day. The
Mhm.
traffic down here is wretched. I don't know if you've been down here, Scott, but people, first of all, don't know how to drive. And then with all the theme parks, the
Coming from
traffic is
Ohio,
just
that's
awful.
saying something, that's for
Oh,
sure.
listen, no, it's much worse down here, trust me. No one knows what a turn signal is down here at all. But yeah, what should have been like, a 30-minute commute to work would end up being an hour and 15 minutes sometimes. And it just was too much. So I found a place closer, which took me about 20 minutes to get to, and you know, I kind of took a step down because I was, like I said, my first job down here, chef de cuisine, and then that second job I was the sous chef. But you
Mm.
know, it's all the same as far as I'm concerned. You know, I don't need the big title. I just need to be doing what I enjoy.
And talk about that a second. What is your favorite or most fun part of a meal to create that you enjoy making? And what's one that I've done it enough. I don't want to make that ever again if I don't ever have to.
You know, that's always a tough question. People ask a lot, you know, you're a chef. What do you like to cook? What's your favorite thing to cook? Or, you know, and that's a really tough question for me, because I really realistically love to do it all. I mean, you know, my husband's Filipino. I've learned how to cook Filipino food, so I do that. Um, if I had to choose a favorite, my favorite thing probably to cook is duck. I love duck. You know, it's finicky, but when it's done right, it's amazing. So any kind of duck, I love to do a confit, you know, duck breast, anything like that. I wouldn't say there's anything that I don't want to do anymore. I mean, I love it so much. You know, I do savory and sweet stuff. So cooking, baking, all of it. I just really enjoy being in the kitchen. It's meditative for me. You know, it's very relaxing. So
Right. And I think I read somewhere you were been featured in quite a few magazines and everything. And I think you said once, excuse me, that I really loved that you have the art of cooking, which is really the experimentation, the science part, and you have the baking, which is like an exact science, right? So that's kind
yeah,
of a good yin and yang there to create from, I would imagine.
yeah, it is. I mean, you know, like exactly the cooking savory stuff is you know, you're able to really kind of do whatever you want. You know, there's no holds barred. But with the baking, you know, it's you got to do it right, otherwise it's just gonna flop. So the precision of baking is quite enjoyable. But you know, the again, the freeness that you have with savory cooking is nothing better than that.
I can imagine. Well, I want to ask about there's a lot of successful LGBTQ chefs out there who've competed on reality shows. I told you off air I'm a huge fan of reality TV cooking. Top Chef, especially. We now have an out lesbian chef. Kristen Kish is taking over for Padma as the host of Top Chef. She was a season 10 winner. Have you ever thought about going on a reality show like that, or what are your thoughts on those?
You know what? I have actually. Years ago, I tested for a show that I don't know if it ever aired. It was supposed to be Rocco DiSpirito. It was called Rocco's Dinner Party, and the chefs were to compete, were to like plan out and style an entire dinner party. I went through the process. I filled out the application and I did an on-screen test, and didn't end up getting on that. And I would say it was a little over a year ago, I did a test for Chopped. They were planning on doing a drag episode, and so they had me get in full drag and do a test with them over Zoom for that. And I don't think they ever filmed that episode because I've looked for it to see if they ever filmed it, but I've never found it. So I guess they didn't end up going forward with it. But hopefully, if they do, they'll reach out to me. But you know, I do want to do some of those shows. I've looked over the guys grocery games applications, and Chopped again just for you know for anything. So I just received an email about casting for those shows. So I'm planning on submitting for those. So hopefully one of these days you'll end up seeing me on your TV screen.
Nice, fingers crossed. Well, I do want to. That's the last two things I want to talk about. First is the drag persona. You do this drag persona on occasion. Have you seen Neil Patrick Harris and his husband David Burka's Drag Me to Dinner show on Hulu? I love that concept. Talk about drag, what it is for you, and that fun. What's your drag name? And give me a little bit about that persona.
Oh, so okay. My drag name is Seneca Shea, and yeah, I started doing drag just for fun in college. It was I actually the first time I ever did drag was in high school. I want to say junior or senior year, a friend had a Halloween party, and I looked hideous. It was like the worst wig and like, just terrible, terrible, terrible. But then when I went to college, I did drag on Halloween one night, and I had so much fun that I just decided to start trying to see about performing. And there was a club there still there in Akron called the Intervelt, and I used to perform there on weekends.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would, I just enjoyed it so much. It's a lot of fun. I become a completely different person. She's loud, she's obnoxious, she's a lot of fun. I don't do that much anymore. That's why, my bios all say occasional drag queen. My husband and I used to, in New York, host big Halloween parties every year, and we'd do drag then, and I would, perform. We do all of our friends would get together, and some of them would do drag and some of them wouldn't, but those of who wanted to could do a drag number, so we do that. We actually, the year we got married, at our Halloween party, we both put on wedding dresses and did a second ceremony in drag and had fun doing that.
Oh,
So um, I haven't, other than the audition for the Chopped thing, I haven't really done drag since moving to Florida. But maybe one day I'll hop on a stage again.
how fun that is. That sounds amazing. I love that.
And
Well,
yeah,
let's finish up talking about the food truck. I mean, I love the name, Duck Truck Gourmet. It's I love food trucks, but they also intimidate the heck out of me because said I'm a big guy and it feels like such an enclosed space, and you have only so much shelf space, I imagine, inside to decide what you're going to use from. But when you get to a food truck, the food is usually out of this world because they are such a small menu and they usually specialize in it. Talk about what brought the truck to life for you.
well, so I don't actually have a truck just yet. Working on that, but I do. The mobile food concept. So I set up like a tent with tables and my equipment and stuff like that at farmers markets, like you noted when we started. So it's still the same though. I mean, I have very little space. I have like 6 by 6 feet to work with, and it's cramped and crowded and limited space on what I can have there and stuff. But it's something that I kind of always wanted to do. It's a little easier and less expensive than a restaurant, to do a truck. And looking for funding for that, trying to save my pennies and get that going sometime in the near future with the actual truck itself. But um, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit easier of an outlet because I don't have anyone else to have to answer to. I can do exactly what I want when I want. I can work on days that I want to work. I don't have to work every day. It's a bit easier of a job to have, I think.
I bet. Well, I love that concept. And it's kind of the same thing, but if you could do any type of pop up restaurant ever, what kind of a pop up restaurant would you like to do? Because it sounds very similar to what you're doing almost. But
Yeah, that's something that I have been looking into as well, as doing a pop-up, because I'd love to do that. And I think I do something along those lines. Like my menu concept for that is, everything would have duck in it in some form or another. And that's exactly what I would do. Just have, like maybe a prefix menu of, 3 to 5 courses, starting off with some duck pozole, moving into some empanadas, maybe a duck confit on the menu. But yeah, just, again, a duck is my favorite thing to do. So if I did a pop-up, it would definitely be heavily focused on that. I mean, throw some stuff in there for the people who might not like duck, but if you're coming to Duck Truck Gourmet, you know what you're looking for.
there you go. I like that. And I keep thinking of more questions I want to ask because what about is there a cookbook in the future? Because you have such of these signature recipes that we've talked about just on this show alone, and I'm sure you have so many in your back pocket there. Have you ever thought about that, even self-published or anything?
Exactly. Yeah, I am working on self-publishing a cookbook. I'm putting the recipes together. I've been working on it for about a year now. So hopefully, my goal is to have that ready to go out by the end of the year. So looking for Christmas gifts hopefully that'll be out and ready to available. So, that'll be, on my website, and I'll have Amazon. I'm sure I'll be able to put it up on Amazon. So I'm workshopping the name of it. I'm thinking about calling it No Training Necessary, since I'm a self-taught chef, but we'll see what sparks when I finally get it done.
I love that. You'll have to come back on when it's ready to go, and we'll have to sell some books for you and talk about it. I love to
That'd be
talk about
awesome.
the recipes, because that's the last thing we'll talk about before we go here. I do want to talk about your website. It is amazing. Chefs are very good about giving good answers, but you give full recipes on your website, which I think is amazing. You talk about your menu that you have available. You do some different things on there. The website is just fantastic. Talk about sharing food, how important that is for you.
I think it's like the best form of showing love that you can do. I mean, that's my love language, obviously. So it's just always something. I mean, that's how I grew up. My grandmother would, we would always be at my grandmother's house, and it'd always be centered around the kitchen and sharing a meal and having good times. So something that's always been important to me. And I don't, I'm never any happier than when I feed somebody and they love what they're having. It makes me feel elated all the time. So, with the website, I wanted to, it's like, well, why do a blog and have my own website? Why do two separate things? Why not integrate it? So that's why I decided to put the recipe section on the website too, is like, just share it all in one location. No need to have people hopping all around the place, all over the internet trying to find me. It's just a central location where they can book me for catering, or they can look at my recipes and print them out and use them. And so that's it.
That's a great segue into wrapping this up. Chef Lynn Wheeler, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Plug that website, give that website name, and if they want to follow you on social media, where they can find you in both those places.
Okay, yeah. So the website is cheflynnwheeler.com, and Chef Lynn Wheeler on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the social medias. TikTok now, which I don't do much, but I'm learning it. So Chef Lynn Wheeler everywhere.
Amazing. Well, if you get back up to Ohio, you have to give me a holler so we can have a coffee or something. I would love that. If I ever get my happy butt down to Florida, which I have not done in my 40, 50 plus years, we'll have to hook up down there. But thanks for taking the time to come on the Left of Str8 Show, my friend.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to meet up with you. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You're very welcome. Stay on the line, guys. Be sure to check out, we're going to do a special 5 questions with Chef Lynn next Tuesday. So look for that. We got some fun, goofy questions there. Check out the website. You're going to be impressed. The pictures are gorgeous. That maple bacon cheesecake you talked about, oh my God, looks so good. Guys, you've been listening to the Left of Str8 Show right here on the Left of Str8 Radio Network. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Left of Str8 Show. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast distributor, and please give us a 5-star rating so more listeners can find us. You can follow us on social media, and be sure to check out our website, www.leftofstraightradio.com, for contests and other news and information. See you next week.